Hi, I'm Uzo from Avery, and today's video we're going to be talking about it's module 1 actually for your supporting teaching and learning in schools qualification, also known as the teaching assistant course. Okay, now today's video is module 1, and module 1 is going to be in 3 parts, but I will be breaking down the video so that it's not too much for the students. Okay, now the topic for today is communication, or module 1 as a whole is about communication and professional relationships with children, young people, and adults. And that's going to be looking at how you communicate or talk with children, okay, and the kind of professional relationship that you have with the children in school as a teaching assistant, with young people if they're in secondary school, and with adults being your colleagues from work or their parents. Now, by the end of this video, you should be able to explain to me why effective communication is important. So, first of all, you should be able to tell me what communication is, what is effective communication, why is it important when you talk about building good or positive relationships with children, young people, and adults. You should also be able to explain the principles or the truth behind relationship building, okay, with children, young people, and adults. You should also be able to understand and explain to me how different social, professional, and cultural situations can affect relationships and the way we communicate. So we're going to get started on this unit. Now, just some introduction about this module. Okay, it basically tells you what the module is about. Now, successful relationships have a positive effect on learning and behavior. Now, when you're being listened to and responded, so basically being listened to and responded to by trusting adults, it encourages children to have active engagement. It supports their development of curiosity, their creative, their resilience, and that's, the key features or the characteristics of good and effective learning in children. Now, basically, if a child feels that you're listening to them, they are more engaged, they want to do more, they want to learn more, they want to behave better. Okay, so that's some of the things that this module talks about. It also talks to you about why it is important to maintain positive relationships and communications with children. Now, positive relationships or effective communication is actually very important when you are effective communication, I would say, is very important when you are building positive or good relationships with people, especially in the school setting. Okay, now during this module you will look at things like and that's what we covered in the previous slide, the principles of building positive relationship with children, young people, and adults. And that would include things like considering the reasons why effective communication is so important, the effect of social, professional, and cultural situations on communication, some of the difficulties that you face when communicating with people. Okay, and we're also and that's basically what we will cover just in this module. Now, the one thing I have to say is if you have any questions during the time of this video, please write them down, and you can always ask this question in the online classroom. Okay. Now, one thing also that or two things I have to add here is that an adult or adults who demonstrate or show mutual respect, collaboration or negotiation, so better workings, are positive role models, and they have a big impact on the behavior of children. So if you show that you respect first of all yourself and the child, and you are willing to work with the child, in most cases it will have a very, very good, positive, and a big impact on the behavior of children. And also, like I keep saying so far, effective communication or good communication is very important and a part of building and keeping positive relationships. Now, we're going to look into effective communication. First and foremost, before we think about what is effective communication, we have to understand what is communication. Now, communication is very simply the act of exchanging information. Okay, so it's the act of transferring information or moving information from one place to the other. Some other meanings of communication is, like I've said, imparting or giving. Okay, giving or exchanging information by speaking, by writing, or by using other ways. So other ways are, for example, what I'm doing, using this video to communicate with you about this course or this module. It could be by pictures. Some people say, you can look at a picture and that picture has said so much more than any writing could do. Okay, so that's, different ways of communicating. Now, what is effective communication? Now, this is my simplified version. Effective communication is when you or myself in this case as the speaker, delivers a message so clear that you, the person who is listening to me, understands the message clearly. So if I'm speaking to you and you don't understand what I'm saying, then I have not been effective in my communication. Okay, so if the message is not understood by the person who's listening, this is not effective communication. So just think about it. Effective communication is when the speaker delivers a message clearly in such a way that is understood by the person that is listening. Now, what we have to look at why effective communication is important. Now, it's important because first and foremost, it builds positive relationships. If people understand you, they have a good relationship with you, and they're more positive, they're relaxed, they feel better around you. When you're dealing with children, it gives the children the confidence in their learning because they understand you, you are so clear, they know what you want them to do. Now, when it comes to parents, the parents feel involved in their children's learning and progress. Why? Because at the end of the day, maybe in the communication book, for example, you have explained clearly how the child has progressed or anything that you want to communicate to the parents. And another thing that I would say is if you communicate effectively, it creates, less tension. There is no tension between the school, the teachers, or the parents. Because I know sometimes when a parent doesn't feel like they understand what's going on with their child, it can create tension and, like, I would say, bad blood between the parent and the school or the teacher. Okay, so effective communication is very, very important. Now, I'm not going to go through this particular case study. This will be a homework that will be given to you for this particular video. And it's just for you to think about and write your thoughts and what you're thinking about it. But this case study is actually about the importance of effective communication. So we will be getting you to look at a teaching assistant who's working for a school, and she's gone on her lunch and the other teacher didn't know. And because of that, they had a misunderstanding. So I would urge you, please, to look through this particular case study as part of this video, and I will be giving you a copy as homework for you to read through and answer the questions. Okay, now the questions here, there are 3 questions. So who is in the wrong? Do you think that the pupils in the class will have noticed this misunderstanding, and how might this have been handled better by both the teacher and Trudy? So please read this very carefully. If you don't understand, please ask me a question on the classroom, online classroom. Principles of building relationships. Now, the principles of building relationships with children and adults in any context, so in any scenario, in any situation, are that if others are comfortable in your company, they will be more likely to communicate effectively. So, for example, if people do not get along, or they're like suspicious of one another, they are likely to avoid one another anywhere that's possible. So they wouldn't want to talk to each other. They do avoid one another. Now, one thing I have to say here is that positive relationships is not something that you just leave to chance. You don't say, yes, I'm sure we'll get along just fine. No, especially in like the school environment, you have to work on it to make sure that you have a good and a positive relationship, especially with the children and colleagues. Okay? Now, on the next slide, I'm going to show you a little diagram, and that's basically to say that, we do build relationships with others in school on a daily basis. So if you're a teaching assistant, I'm sure that you do things on a daily basis to build relationships, and you do it in so many ways. Now, some of these, you're probably doing it already. You're not thinking about it, but I will talk about some of the things that you will do, or so that we can take the time to consider what we do to make sure we are building better relationships. So here's the diagram, and it goes through some of the principles or the things that we do to build positive relationships. And that's things like being clear on key points, effective communication. I've talked about that so much. Being considerate, remembering issues which are personal to others, maintaining a sense of humor, taking time to listen to others, and showing respect. And I will be going into a bit more details about this in the next few slides. So let's take the first one, effective communication. Like I said, This is very, very important when you're developing relationships with others. And it talks, it's about different forms of communication. So when we talk about effective communication, what would be the best way, for example, for you to communicate with a child's or a pupil's parent? Okay, so you need to think about the best way or the most effective way for you to communicate. Okay, next, showing respect. Now, in order to develop positive relationship with others, it's very, very important for you to be courteous and show respect. Okay, so just show some courtesy and respect. It is also very important for you to listen to the point of view of others. So, no talking, over people. Don't interrupt them when they're speaking. Show them some respect by giving them the opportunity or the chance to talk about, or give their own point of view. Adults and pupils may have different values and beliefs from you, and you have to make sure you acknowledge and respect the views of others. So, if other people have a different way of thinking or different views, or sometimes some people that have different religions might have a different view on things, you have to respect them and respect their beliefs and respect their views regardless. Now, one that I'm going to talk about here is to take time to remember people's names and how to address them. I don't, this might be me, but I don't like it when people say, "Oh, I'm so bad at names. Sorry, what's your name again?" I find it very disrespectful, because if you cared anything about me or my feelings, or myself as a person, you should take the time at least to remember my name. But hey, that might just be me. um, the next thing is being considerate. Take the time to consider the position of other people. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I called a company because I ordered something that I thought was on a free trial, and it turned out on the fine print that it wasn't, the little letters at the bottom of the screen, that it wasn't a free trial. And I was trying to explain to them that I didn't know this. They didn't care. They were not considerate. They just didn't want to know. And so sometimes it is very important for you to take the time to consider the position of others. When people feel like you understand their situation or their position, they will be more positive and more likely to open up to you and build better relationships. Another thing might be, maybe you might be working with a child and the child is behaving in a certain way. Take the time to be considerate and maybe ask some questions, because it might be that the child is under pressure and you need to understand why they are behaving or behaved in a certain way. Now, an example is my daughter. She fractured her arm a couple of weeks ago. And I noticed that she started to get quite frustrated, especially when it came to writing. And she would lash out and she would get very angry. And I was wondering, what's the matter? But then I realized that she's, kind of feeling a bit under pressure because she broke the arm, her right arm that she uses to write. So it's like she couldn't use that arm properly anymore. So she felt a bit under pressure, and that's why she was behaving the way that she did. So, if you were in a situation like that in school, you have to be considerate and understand why the child is behaving in a certain way. Now, also on that diagram, it says remembering issues that are personal to them. So always take the time to inquire or ask after particular aspects of a person's life. So, just make sure that you take the time, to listen to people, to just know how they're doing. It will always help you when you're building positive relationships. When you just take the time, an example would be maybe a colleague of yours at school is concerned about their child, maybe getting into a primary school for the first time. Just by asking, oh, how are you? How's your daughter? Did you get, or your son? Did you get the school that you wanted? It shows that you care and you build better and positive relationship with that person. Taking the time to listen to others. Just make sure that you take the time to listen to other people. So, for example, if they're asking you for your advice or your help, just take the time to listen to them. Don't rush them. Don't talk over them. Give them, the time and the space and just listen. Also, if they need to confide in you, so that could possibly be like telling you a secret or something that they don't want other people to know, just take the time and listen to them. It could even be a child. A child might want to confide in you or tell you something that's going on at home. Take the time to listen. If the person doesn't feel like you are listening to them, sometimes they can just close up and that's it. They won't tell you anything. So always take the time. And when someone is talking to you, just show them that you're interested in what they're saying. So, for example, it could be by nodding your head or, looking at them or just showing that you're interested. Your expressions on your face matter a lot. And when you're responding, or it's best to respond appropriately or in the right way. Be clear on key points. So when you have conversations with others, in which you are giving them information, you should always make sure that they are clear on what you have said at the end of the discussion. Okay, so just always make sure that you are clear when speaking to people. And also, when you are, so I think I should say more on this particular one. If you're giving someone an instruction or telling them what to do, just make sure you are clear, and also, especially on the important parts of this thing that, or the instruction of what they need to do. And for children, when you're talking to children or you need them to do something, always ask them to tell you or to repeat back to you what they need to do. It's a way to make sure that you are clear on the key points. Maintain a sense of humor. Some of us are just way too serious. Okay. Sometimes, I know that, the nature of work or of your work as a teaching assistant in school is important, but sometimes you just also have to take time and see the funny side of things. Okay. And it could be like, in different situations, just take the time to see the funny side of different situations. And laughter is good. I find sometimes maybe when I have a headache and I just laugh it out, sometimes it actually helps me reduce the stress of the headache. So laughing or laughter can be a good icebreaker and also a great way of relaxing and relieving stress. The next thing we're going to talk about is social, professional, and cultural context. And it basically means, communicating in different situations. For example, when you're communicating with other people, you will need to consider the context or the situation in which you are working. So you need to adapt to the way you communicate in different situations. For example, it is likely that you will do this automatically. If you are in a meeting, you will use more formal language and more formal behavior in a meeting. It could be also that the school that you're working in will have a range types of planned communications with other adults. Now, when dealing with other professionals, there will be meetings, there will be discussions, and you never know. You might, sometimes if you're dealing with other teachers, you might not need to use formal language. It might be that you're just having like a casual chat with them. In that case, you can just be more informal and just relaxed, chat with them, that sort of thing. Okay. It could also be that even in the way you write or respond to others. For example, how quickly do you respond to an email? How attentive are you when speaking to somebody? How we dress, for example. Okay. You might also find that communication that is not spoken can be an issue and misread by others. A good example is for some people, when you send a text message and you put an exclamation mark at the end, they might feel like you're bothering. They might think, okay, this person thinks I'm bothering them. Okay, so always be very careful about how you communicate in different situations, whether in a social setting, so more casual, how do you communicate then? Professional, maybe you need to use more formal language, and cultural situations. Now, with the cultural side of things, you have to remember that different cultures will have their own uh, norms of behavior, so which will basically extend to gestures. For example, I was told that some Jewish people, Jewish ladies, they don't shake hands. So you could be dealing or communicating with a Jewish person. I think it's a women don't shake men's hands or something like this. But it might be that you were trying to shake this person's hand and you get offended when they don't take your hand. It is their culture, okay? So you have to be considerate about this. Another thing is, for example, in some cultures, it is not polite to look another person in the eye when speaking with them. So when communicating, just adapt the way or change the way that you communicate in different settings, whether that is social, professional, and or cultural. Finally, something for you to think about. Think about the ways in which your school passes information to adults outside school. So the adults may be parents, carers, maybe outside agencies. Just for yourself, it's not homework. You might want to do two headings: formal communication and informal communication, and just list it out. So it could be letters, emails, posters, and you think about it to say, is this formal or is this not formal? So is it casual or is it formal? Okay. Now, like I've said throughout, if you have any questions at all, please, please, please email me or write me on the classroom, and it will be good because other students can see your question in case they have the same question and have the answer. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. And also I will be issuing or giving out the just a small homework on this case study. Okay then, take care.